Hey everyone, obviously I'm here with Keyrenter Houston. We're a property management company that operates in the greater Houston area. We've operated for the past 10 years, managing hundreds of properties throughout that time. And I'm here today to share 4 key laws and rules in the city of Texas that I think are really important for every investor to know within the city of Houston. Many landlords unknowingly violate rental laws every year, and it often does, result in fines or even lawsuits, and almost always ends up becoming an issue with the tenant. So let's go over 4 of them that you should know in the city of Texas, and also should ensure that you're familiar with, especially if you operate one in the greater Houston area. If you find this video helpful, click the like and subscribe buttons. It would be really helpful for me and ensure that also other people are able to find tips like this, especially if they're looking or they need assistance. We have other videos that are pretty helpful. I'll reference some of those, especially in the next step. Law number 1, this is the most important one in my opinion, and I'm sure many others would think the same. You have to understand the eviction laws in the state of Texas. Every state has specific eviction laws, including notice procedures and legal procedures. Texas is no different. Houston, and Harris County in particular, is also no different. I won't go into the specifics in terms of exactly what those steps are. We have another really good video that goes in very detailed depth in terms of the eviction process, how we handle it, and the steps that we take. But suffice to say that I have personally gone to JP Court many times and seen evictions thrown out and have them restart. The owner has to restart the process because they did not follow the right process or they didn't do the correct notifications. And so anyways, it's very important that you understand those rules. Make sure you review that video if you have any questions, and it is very important that you ensure you do that. Otherwise, you'll find yourself with a tenant that's not paying and an eviction that you cannot file or process. Number 2, the second set of laws that I constantly see the landlords having an issue with or running into trouble with are security deposit laws. Security deposits are very, very important in the state of Texas. There is a very strict set of rules and regulations that you have to follow whenever you collect a security deposit. Most particularly, you have to ensure during the move-out process that you return the security deposit, complete the disposition, and also list out all the charges against the security deposit within 30 days of a tenant's move out. Also, for those charges, you can't just charge arbitrary numbers. You can't say, hey, this is going to cost me $500, I think, and so I'm going to charge $500 your security deposit. You actually have to include specific numbers and invoices to justify that charge. So as an example, if it costs you $437 to fix a particular hole in the wall, then you have to include that invoice. There is space for you to include an administrative fee or some minor upcharge for some of these issues, but you have to make sure you're staying legal. Before I move on with the next 2, I want to briefly say a couple things. 1, Section 92 of the Texas Property Code lists out a lot of these rules and regulations that I'm sharing. Some of the stuff like the eviction process and whatnot, there are some particular county-related important processes and steps. I talk about that in the eviction video, but most of this is in Section 92. Make sure you understand that. Also, disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. I'm not pretending to be an attorney. This is definitely just information based off of my opinion and my experience as a property manager for the past 10 years. Always, always, always consult an attorney for any legal advice. And then finally, shameless plug, Keyrenter Houston is a property management company in the city of Houston. If you find yourself getting cold sweats thinking about the legal ramifications of handling property and managing it yourself, give us a shout. We're here to help. We manage a lot of properties in the city of Houston and the greater Houston area, and have done so pretty successfully for the past 10 years. Our clients love us. We're able to avoid all these issues. Knock on wood, no lawsuits yet, and hopefully no losses to come, because we do treat this very importantly, and we ensure that our clients are protected as much as we can. The third set are lease requirements. I cannot share the count of how many times a landlord has come to us saying, hey, I've got my own lease, I've got my own tenant, can you just manage it for me? And we look at the lease and it's something that they just pulled off of some website online. It's a non-standard lease. That always causes issues. In fact, it's come to the point where whenever we get a new property by a property owner, we try, unless there's something particularly specific about that property, we try to get them on a standard lease. When I say standard lease, that means that it's a lease that is commonly used in your jurisdiction. For us in Harris County, That pretty much is the Texas Association of Realtors lease. And that's important because the state of Texas, nor the Texas Real Estate Commission, that's the licensing board for agents and whatnot, they do not provide a standard contract for leases. And this is important because that implies that you can use something that fits the Texas property code of your choice. But what ends up happening functionally is that when you go to JP court, let's say you have to file an eviction, you go to JP court or you go to small claims, you end up presenting a non-standard lease, a non-standard agreement, and it ends up getting thrown out. The JP will just simply tell you, hey, get another one signed. That's in fact happened to us with a client that had a lease that they drew up themselves. While it was technically, from our perspective and our attorney's perspective, legal, it's still, the JP was like, look, just get a standard word signed and come back to me in a month. So we ended up wasting a whole month getting that all handled and resolved and losing out on the cost of that eviction. So all this to say, try and use a standard TAR lease. It'll make your life a lot easier. Now, generally that implies that you should utilize an agent, but you can really just Google search and you will find the standard TAR lease online. Number 4, this is technically 3 of them, but it's 3 really common ones that I felt all kind of fit in the same set of rules: late fees, maintenance, and timelines for maintenance. Texas is really lax in a lot of regulations, and that can lead a lot of landlords to think that they have a lot of leeway. And yes, that's true. I just mentioned they're lax, but there are some pretty specific guidelines in some pretty surprising places. For example, late fees. Late fees cannot be charged on the 1st, after the 1st, unless there is a clear outline for when late fees are charged on the 1st in the lease. More pertinently, they often are given a 3-day grace period. And then second, late fees also each month cannot exceed 12% of a month's rent. That's just a hard and fast rule. There's no really way to break that. In addition, maintenance itself cannot be charged to a tenant until it is determined that it's the tenant's responsibility to be charged. Basically, it's not normal wear and tear. The tenant caused the issue. We encounter a lot of landlords that come to us and say, hey, I've got a tenant, I have a home warranty. This is super great for me because the tenant pays the home warranty call fee, $45, $50, $100 or whatever, whenever they have a claim. Home warranty comes and fix it and we're all good. However, you can't do that actually. Legally, the owner is responsible for that fee. And then afterwards, if it was in fact the tenant's fault, then you can charge that $100 back to the tenant. But initially, you cannot ask or require the tenant to pay for that fee. That is something that's super important to understand, and a lot of why landlords don't know that or understand that. And then finally, specifically regarding maintenance, right? The timeline is super important, especially when it comes to emergency maintenance. Now, whenever there is an emergency, that definition is kind of a little hazy, but think of things in particular, like what would you think of as emergency? If there's no AC in the property in the midst of summer and it's like 100 degrees outside, that's probably an emergency. There are some specific emergencies listed on the property code. In particular, if there is no hot water at a property, if there is an issue with the roof, allowing water to come in whenever it rains, like a hole in the roof, for instance. If there is no working bathroom at the property, there has to be always at least one working bathroom. Those are some clear-cut emergencies listed in the property code that require the property owner to handle them and resolve them within 7 days. Can't just let it slide. If there are some notable exceptions, like the tenant's not allowing you to come in, things like that. But by and large, you are required to resolve them within 7 days. That is super duper important. If it's not resolved within 7 days, the tenant has remedies, including they can try and exact financial remedies to get either money out of you or at least compensate them for the issue of dealing with this for 7 days. Remember, understanding the rules and regulations listed in the Texas Property Code are really imperative as a real estate investor in the state of Texas. I mentioned us as a property management company. Hiring a good property management company can help you with a lot of that. But even then, it's still important that you at least understand them and ensure that the property management company themselves aren't running afoul of those issues. Because otherwise, you'll find yourself holding the bag, and it's an expensive bag that you'll find yourself holding. Remember, I mentioned earlier, but this video is for educational purposes only. Always consult a licensed attorney to ensure that you're in compliance, or ensure that the property management company you're working with has a licensed attorney to ensure compliance. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. It'll help me a lot. It'll also help you find other property management tips that I'm posting for landlords in the greater Houston area. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much.